The government is forcing you to put tenants before family. Let's have a look. Good evening, everyone. Florian Heiser here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your hashtag not sponsored cheap coffee. And, well, I want to talk about this article that was sent to me by my wife, Rachel, because it got her really, really mad. Now, contrary to popular belief, I'm not a property is the be-all, end-all of investment. Go all in on property. I'm not a property bro. When I make the argument that I can't see property crashing, that's more an indication of just how stuffed up the system is. That's just how it is. It's facing reality. It's not talking up an asset. It's the stuff that we're going to see in this article that makes me really doubt why anyone would want to put in a big chunk of their money into property when you can just put it into shares, get a nice dividend every month, and you can liquefy it in an instant. Much more flexibility, freedom, and you don't have to deal with this shit because this is borderline, well, this is fascist. The state dictating to the individual what you have to do with your private property. This is the Australian way, guys. This is where we're heading. Okay, it's the far left. Well, not really. It's probably central left. It just seems far left to anyone that's reasonable, that wants to have control over their private property. I guess that's a far right concept now these days, isn't it? Shit, the Overton window's shifted. So, and this is, I don't think this is the woman in the picture. A landlord wanted April out to move in a family member. VCAT said no, so the government said no. The Victorian, and wait till you hear the story here. The Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal has ruled that a landlord could not evict her tenant to move her father into the home because it could have left the tenant worse off. So this woman wants to move her father into a house that she owns as an investment, but she can't get rid of the tenant. The state is controlling what that person can do with their own property. And you wonder why people are selling property in Victoria and getting out. There you go. Guys, there's another pillar for the property market in Brisbane, particularly if everyone votes the right way and we get rid of this Labor government in the next state election. The case shows how a change to Victoria's tenancy laws in 2018 works in practice. A clause inserted in the Residential Tenancies Act states that possession orders, just one step in forcibly evicting tenants from their homes, must be reasonable and proportionate. It means an eviction is no longer given if a valid notice to vacate is served. Experts say it prevents homelessness, but also forces landlords to maintain tenancies they'd rather end. The test is a relief for tenants with nowhere else to go in the housing crisis, but angers investors who claim a loss of control over their properties. That's exactly what it is. It's your property. If you want to have a family member move in there, what's wrong with that? In cases where both parties need to live in the home, VCAT now weighs up who needs it more. So what if you were doing the rent vesting thing, you lost your job, and you wanted to move to your property to save some money, but the VCAT, the government says, no, the tenant has more right to your property than you. Your property that you're taking all the risk, all the liability for. See, the shit like this is going to disincentivize property investment. It's going to drive up rental costs. I'm really concerned we're heading to a future where you're going to have less mum and dad investors in the property sector here in Australia, and it's just going to be the union-controlled super funds, the bank-controlled super funds, and large corps. Which corpo do you support? Do you live in the Google complex? The tenant in the case, April, told this masthead that she and her 17-year-old son, been evicted, they would have become homeless. I'm constantly trying to come up with ways to make an application look better. I'm here with long COVID and unable to work, so you couldn't have a worse scenario to look for a rental, she said. My doctor wrote something to present to the hearing to say that if I were to be made homeless, I would not have much longer to live. Okay, so here's the thing. I mean, you got to feel sorry for this woman, but Other landlords are going to look at this example. Okay, single mother, unable to work, long COVID. You think they're not going to... It's going to be completely dodgy, but they will tell their real estate agents to filter out those people. It's going to create discrimination against the people that need housing the most. She was a single mother and disability support payment recipient. Between receiving her first notice to vacate and the VCAT hearing, she unsuccessfully applied for about 300 rentals. Her son was prepared to contribute to rent for a new home, but wasn't able to apply for rentals as a co-tenant because of his age. Almost every day, you're reading thanks but no thanks, and you know that it's discrimination. Yeah, this is this is why it's happening. They don't want to risk having her in the property because then they can't get rid of her. This is what happens with these type of rules that they put in place. Now she's trapped. That's hard enough even if you don't have anything else going on. It literally feels like you're hanging on by your fingernails at the edge of a cliff. It's been so bad. April was sent a notice to vacate because the landlord wanted her father, and wait till you hear about the dad too. He doesn't have it easy either, to move in. The landlord's father was a tradesman, but had impaired lung capacity and was unable to work full-time. He had previously rented through his friend, but was evicted because of the sale of the property and was homeless and had been couch surfing. The father said he was unable to live with anyone else because of his condition meant getting sick could be fatal. So she's got a doctor saying if she moves out, she could die. And he's worried that if he gets sick, it could be fatal. I mean, shit. The father had not applied for any rentals because he expected to be able to move into his daughter's property and didn't think he'd be successful in the private market. Now, that is a completely reasonable assumption. If your daughter owns a property and she wants you to live there, and that's her private property, shouldn't you have control over your private property? Well, not in Australia, not in Victoria, not in the rental market, guys. This is the problem with these rules and things. That the road to hell is paved with good intentions. These are good intention rules, but now this woman she's obviously not going to get a chance to go anywhere else. No one will want her because this might happen. So she loses out. She loses opportunities. Other people in her situation lose out on opportunities. This is why sometimes this is why we all advocate for less, or sensible people advocate for less government intervention in the private sector. Because this is a clear example of the unintended consequences of these interventions. And everyone loses. Everyone loses, except the bureaucrats that have more paperwork and make money pushing paper around. And that can't be that fulfilling. Peninsula Community Legal Centre lawyer Tanya Lakey represented April at the tribunal. She said that the case came down to who would be worse off if the eviction went ahead. See, it's got nothing. Private ownership doesn't seem to matter anymore. So the government is tricking you into being a social housing provider. He'd rented from a good friend for many years, and they assumed that meant he couldn't get a property, she said. Well, the tribunal member, was critical of that. He was of the view that the father was actually quite an attractive tenant because he was a male that was working on his own, didn't have a bad rental history, and had considerable savings. So, because he's got his shit together, and he's a man, what's the point then? What's the point? Oh boy, all the MGTOW black pill blokes are going to love this, aren't they? And I think that was, honestly, she could probably go, there'd be more homeless shelters for women. There'd be more opportunities for her with her son, with a child. Many more. How many shelters are there for men to go with their kids? I remember I interviewed some gentlemen trying to set one up. There's none in Australia. The ruling noted that the landlord's father had $250,000 in a savings account and $30,000 in shares. That's his money. There you go. See, the tribunal is making these decisions of how you can control your own private property. Shit. Tribunal member Robert Daly dismissed the application for the possession order. Wow. Victoria, everyone. Who's going to buy investment properties there? And you may think, oh, great, more people will buy houses. We need investors to buy property, to build property, to get houses in the market, to stimulate the economy, to provide trades and opportunities. It's not the first time the test has been applied. Last year, a landlord who could no longer live at home with his wife and children and was at times living in his cars and hotels was denied a possession order for his investment property because the multi-generational family of tenants could not find a new home despite applying for 80 rentals. The family of four had 3 disabled members, 2 children with autism and their mother, who had a disabling brain injury. The last tenant was the children's grandmother. The landlord had not applied for any rentals. Yeah, because you've got a property that you own, but you don't own it. Ownership means you get to get, well, the financial benefit of it, but you don't have complete control over it, do you? It puts a human side to these decisions. I think it's a good thing that tribunal members have the opportunity to consider people's circumstances and not just a fact that you've served a valid notice. There's an automatic return of possession to the owner after 60 days. Once a possession order is granted, landlord can apply for a warrant and have the tenant forcibly evicted by police. April said it was not the first possession order she had fended off before the tribunal. She said she had been handed a notice to vacate months earlier. The reason given was the intent to sell with vacant possession. The member said, he wasn't going to vacate me and my son and make us homeless because the owner of the property wanted to sell the house untenanted, she said. But they hadn't provided evidence that if they sold the house untenanted, they would be able to get $50,000 more, even if they had. Now, 100% they will be able to get more money if it's untenanted. Because now, look at this. Look at the precedent that's been set here. If you've got a tenanted property, there's no guarantee that you can take possession of it. There's no guarantee you can move into it. So any first home buyers that want to get a property, they're going to be locked out of it. 100% how are they going to have to, well, I guess they have to prove it, but still, we'll see. Even if they had, the member would have had to weigh up the negative effects of putting the 2 people out of their home versus the positive effects on the landlord. Boy. Lakic said landlords were often affronted by the reasonable and proportionate test. It's a very emotional area of law, she said. For the renter, it's their home. For the landlord, I think they often see that they've worked very hard and they've sacrificed to purchase this other property because they've usually already got a home they're living in. Yes, it is theirs. It is theirs. They've taken the risk, the liability, the responsibility. They've sacrificed. Imagine working your ass off to pay another property. How many, I guarantee you there are a lot of viewers of the channel here that are bloody hard workers. Just think about all that extra time, hours, stress. There's a reason why I'm already bloody grey at 40-something. Okay? And then the government says, "No, sorry, you can't put your father that's at risk of dying in your home." Nope. Government says no. It is their investment property, but they feel they've sacrificed and it's theirs. Yes, it is theirs. April said the landlord was flabbergasted that she was like, "This is my property." Yeah, it is. But there you go. What are you voting for? Who have you voted for? Maybe we need to get more people understanding what they're voting for. All those feel-good leftist bloody governments that intervene more and more in the economy. You're losing your rights. You don't have control over your property. The Mast had attempted to contact the landlord for comment. An email sent via their lawyer received no response. Yeah, of course not. Unpredictability and uncertainty. Well, you're certain that it's going to be a pain in the ass, isn't it? Tenants Victoria Chief Executive Jennifer Beveridge said the case showed how the housing crisis could affect both sides of the tenant-landlord relationship. Increasingly, this is creating unpredictability and uncertainty for more and more people, she said. It's not just renters that it's starting to affect, it's the rental providers. In this instance, their families as well. This is a whole of community problem now. The Australian Landlords Association President Andrew Kent agreed disputes over rental properties could become emotionally fraught. A lot of the time, the property they have does have a strong emotional connection. It may be the house they want to live in. It may be their parents' house. There is an emotional connection to these places. They're not shares, he said. Landlords say, how come the rules are so different between landlords and tenants? How come I'm losing control of my property? Because you're voting as a majority for leftist governments to continue to intervene in the economy. Because all of these touchy-feely, good, hippy-dippy rules that you want, you're now reaping the consequences of your decisions. That's why you're losing control of your property. And it's the majority. And don't think Liberal are that much better. There's a sense that we have control over these things that we own, whether it's a house, a car, or whatever. Yes, no, it should be. So she said that the reasonable and proportionate test reduced a landlord's formerly near absolute control over their properties, but it had been successful in preventing tenants from becoming homeless. No matter how any of us may view what's happened in this case, it's providing some framework for VCAT to be able to decide who is more susceptible and who would be subjected to greater harm, she said. It's testing the difference between a property as an asset and a home for someone, and we're starting to understand the nuances of that a bit better. Kent said landlords shouldn't be expected to house the most vulnerable in society. The state government had dropped the ball on building enough public and community housing to house those in need. Yeah, the Victorian government has done a complete and utter shit job of public housing. Okay, it's not the federal government, it's the Victorian government. Good old Dan Andrews. They've done bugger all. It's a sad state of affairs when the choices are so grim. It shouldn't be a choice between having a rental and being homeless, he said. Well, they need to make it easier for people to build. You need to make it easier to build. We need less hoops to jump through. We need to allow simplified construction. Scale back the requirements. Why do you think people are going into tiny homes? Not because they want to live a glorified caravan life, because they can get around so much of the legislation and bullshit and build a house that they can quite comfortably live in that can get blown away. But you couldn't build it and fix it to the ground with those design constraints. Wouldn't pass the code. If you could build it safer. April is looking for a new home, but remains concerned she could face another notice to vacate before finding somewhere else to live. Now, this poor woman, she is going to have a really terrible time at finding a home because any landlord who is concerned that they may have this person trapped in their property is going to do whatever they can to discriminate. So this ruling, or these rules that have been put in place to protect the vulnerable people in our community are going to screw them over. Is it fair? No, it's not. But what are you going to do? Okay, what are you going to do? I remember talking to people who own management rights for large complexes, and they used to love the single mothers because they'd be reliable. They'd always have the money coming in. They'd chase after them. There you go. Any more? Doesn't look like it. I'm still looking, but I don't know why I'd be successful after the past 2 years. My son turned 17 in May, so he'll be 18 in May next year, so maybe I can hold on until then, and his income can be part of the rental applications. When he can afford to put a deposit on a home, that's when it's going to end for us. Okay. Well, let's have a bit of a chat about this one, guys. So what do you think? Whose side are you on in this case? The single mother and son living in the property, or the tradie who's built up a buffer but is in danger of living with other people who wants to live in his daughter's property? I mean, this is Victoria. This is the state of things. The state can dictate and control what you can do with your own property. And there are going to be people out there that think it's a good thing, it's a nice thing, yada, yada, yada. But watch this backfire. Watch this cause more problems for the more vulnerable people in our community. The government can build more houses. The government's going to have a shit time building more houses, more public houses than they already are failing at, particularly in Victoria. if they don't get their nice little tax revenue, and if competent workers get out of the bloody state. Why would you want to stay there? Victoria's cold. And you got to deal with this shit. People wonder why Queensland property is shooting up. Hey, we got out back in Kennett's time. Anyway, guys, let me know your take on this one. As always, take care, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode of HeiseSays. Sorry the episodes are so sparse at the moment. I probably shouldn't even be recording this. I promised to get a whole lot of stuff out on the 8th. We're working on a big project that's design and construct, so we're solving problems as we're going. It's crazy, but it's good. Keeps me out of trouble. And we'll do a house update as well soon. We've had a lot of progress here. It's looking good. We're really kicking on. So it's all going well here, guys. I'm not disappearing from YouTube due to trauma or stress or I don't know, whatever YouTube shit happens. It's just I'm busy. So there you go. That's the two-speed economy. You got people who are flat out, or you got people who are quiet. I hope you're flat out. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.